My dear students, as you know, in our previous lecture, we have discussed the structure, functions, and powers of the UN General Assembly. As I told you, that UN General Assembly holds a central position within the UN system because it serves as main deliberative, policy making, and representative organ of the UN. It consists of all 193 member states. Therefore, it is also known as World Parliament, World Legislature, where each country has an equal voice regardless of its power, regardless of its size. We have also discussed that UN General Assembly discusses and makes decisions on a variety of international issues like peace, security, human rights, development, and international law. It is a platform for democracy, negotiation, and cooperation among nations to address common challenges and promote collective solutions. Now, today we are going to discuss the role of the UN General Assembly. As you know, since all the members are represented in the UN General Assembly, it has emerged as a unique forum for multilateral discussions and negotiations among the member countries on the international issues. In its regular annual and special sessions, international problems are discussed and solutions are suggested. However, its decisions are non-binding, but these recommendations, suggestions of the UN General Assembly reflect the world opinion. In 1945, it had only 46 items on its agenda, but now this list has increased. In 2018, it had 150 items on its agenda, including the United Nations reform, restoring respect for the rule of law, the need of small island developing states, climate change, and participation by all states in the global trading system. As you know that in 2000, it has adopted Millennium Declaration, and member states had shown their commitment to achieve specific goals of this declaration to attain peace, prosperity, and disarmament, along with development and poverty eradication, to safeguard human rights and promote the rule of law, to protect the common environment, to meet the special needs of Africa, and to strengthen the United Nations. So it shows that UN General Assembly is a forum for multilateral negotiations. Similarly, during 1980s, the Assembly became a forum for the North-South dialogue, which is the discussion of issues between industrialized and developing countries. These issues came and discussed in General Assembly because of the phenomenal growth and changing makeup of the UN membership. As you know, in 1945, the UN had only 51 members. It now has 193, of which more than two-thirds are developing countries. Because of their numbers, these developing countries are often able to determine the agenda of the Assembly, the character of its debates, and the nature of its decisions. For many developing countries, the UN is the source of much of their diplomatic influence and the principal outlet for their foreign relations initiatives. Another important role of UN General Assembly is to maintain international peace and security. Dear students, under the UN Charter, the General Assembly cannot make recommendations on peace and security matters which were being addressed by the Security Council. Though Security Council has been made responsible for the maintenance of international peace and security, but UN has innovated a new device known as Uniting for Peace. This doctrine gives power to the General Assembly to take action with regard to peace and security if the Security Council fails to act, owing to the negative vote of a permanent member. Under this new doctrine, UN General Assembly can call a special session and authorize action necessary for protection of peace. The Uniting for Peace resolution has been invoked in several major crises like in Middle East, Hungary, Suez, the Congo, Afghanistan, Palestine, Namibia, etc. In all these cases, the emergency special sessions of the UN General Assembly were called when the Security Council found itself deadlocked. UN General Assembly also plays an important role in the articulation of general principles. The General Assembly has often articulated new principles through its resolutions that have further become the basis for international law. For example, it called seas as the common heritage of mankind. This principle was incorporated in numerous lawmaking treaties, conventions such as Outer Space Treaty, United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea. These principles represent a widespread international consensus. UN General Assembly also plays a significant role in the process of standard setting and the codification of international law. The General Assembly has produced a large number of multilateral lawmaking treaties such as Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, Seabed Treaty, and the United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea. As you know, that UN has set human rights as one of the core objectives. To achieve it, UN has played an important role in the globalization of the idea of human rights. It has been central in establishing the norms, institutions, mechanisms, and laws which give effect to the idea of human rights, like Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This UDHR is a milestone document that outlines fundamental human rights and freedoms, like freedom of speech and expression, right to life. It has a profound impact on shaping international and national legal frameworks for human rights. UN General Assembly has also played a key role in the establishment of UNICEF, United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, and UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, which have made significant contributions to global education, culture, and child welfare. The UN General Assembly also played an important role in decolonization process. As you know, the UN General Assembly has adopted Declaration on the Granting of Independence to colonial countries and people in 1960. It affirmed the right to self-determination and called for an end to colonialism and imperialism, thus recognizing the sovereignty of all people over their natural resources and territories. This declaration marked a significant step in decolonization efforts worldwide and had a transformative impact on global geopolitics. UN General Assembly also called for a new international economic order to address issues of economic inequality between developed and developing countries. While the specific proposals were not fully implemented, the declaration highlighted concerns about economic justice and inequitable international economic order. This new international economic order represents a significant effort by developing countries to assert their interests in the global economic system and address the legacies of colonialism and exploitation. Despite its adoption, many of its main goals remain unrealized, and debates over economic justice continue to shape international relations. UN General Assembly also endorsed the Millennium Development Goals. These are 8 international development goals focusing on poverty, education, gender equality, and health. These goals significantly influenced global development efforts. While progress was made towards achieving many of these goals, but all targets were not met universally. The Millennium Development Goals provided a framework for international development efforts and paved way for the subsequent Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted in 2015 to build upon the achievements and address the unfinished goals of the Millennium Development Goals. UN General Assembly also played an important role as far as the principle of responsibility to protect is concerned. This responsibility to protect is a principle adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2005. It asserts that states have a responsibility to protect their population from genocide, war, crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. However, when a state is unable or unwilling to fulfill this responsibility, the international community has a responsibility to intervene through diplomatic, humanitarian, and, if necessary, military means. This responsibility to protect principle is based on 3 pillars. Number 1, it is the responsibility of each state to protect its population from these crimes. Second pillar is it is the responsibility of the international community to assist the states in fulfilling their protection responsibilities. Third one is it is the responsibility of the international community to take timely and decisive action to prevent and halt mass atrocities when a state is failing to protect its population. This principle of responsibility to protect represents a significant shift in international norms regarding sovereignty and intervention. It emphasizes the protection of individuals from mass atrocities as a primary concern. potentially overriding traditional notions of non-interference in the internal affairs of the states. However, the implementation of responsibility to protect has been controversial and challenging. Debates often arise over the appropriate threshold for intervention, the legitimacy of intervention, and the potential misuse of the principle for geopolitical interests. Despite these challenges, responsibility to protect remains a key framework for addressing and preventing mass atrocities and protecting vulnerable populations around the world. UN General Assembly also played a crucial role in the adoption of the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement is a landmark international agreement aimed at addressing global climate change. It reflects a collective commitment to limit global warming and enhance climate resilience. The Paris Agreement was widely hailed as a historic agreement in international climate diplomacy, with nearly all countries in the world committing to take action on climate change. However, there have been ongoing challenges in implementation, including issues related to financing, technology transfer, and political will. Despite these challenges, the Paris Agreement remains the most significant international effort to address climate change till date. UN General Assembly also adopted Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. This Agenda 2030 represents a comprehensive and ambitious plan to address global challenges and achieve sustainable development by the year 2030. These goals aim to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all by addressing issues like poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality, clean water, and sanitization. By also addressing the issues like decent work, economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, reducing inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions. The adoption of Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals marked a significant milestone in global efforts to promote sustainable development and address pressing challenges facing the world. It provides a shared vision and framework for action for governments, businesses, civil society, and other stakeholders to work together towards a more sustainable and equitable future for all. Lastly, we are going to discuss the role of UN General Assembly towards handling COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, UN General Assembly also played an important role in handling COVID-19. The response to COVID-19 pandemic by the UN General Assembly involves several key actions and resolutions aimed at addressing the global health crisis and its socio-economic impacts. While UN General Assembly itself does not have executive power, but it serves as a platform for member states to coordinate and advocate for collective action. Some of the important resolutions related to COVID-19 pandemic by the UN General Assembly in 2020 include resolution on global solidarity to fight COVID-19. In September 2020, the UN General Assembly adopted this resolution, which emphasizes the need for international cooperation and solidarity to respond to this emerging pandemic. The resolution called for equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines, treatments, and medical supplies, as well as support for developing countries and vulnerable populations. Another action was call for a global ceasefire. The UN General Assembly also issued a call for a global ceasefire in the light of COVID-19 pandemic, urging parties to armed conflicts around the world to lay down their arms and focus on combating this virus. This call aimed to facilitate humanitarian access and support efforts to address the health crisis. UN General Assembly also convened several high-level meetings and briefings to discuss the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic, including its health, social, and economic impacts. These meetings provide a platform for member states, international organizations, and other stakeholders to share experiences, best practices, and challenges in addressing the crisis. The UN General Assembly also reaffirmed the importance of multilateralism and the role of the United Nations system in coordinating the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It emphasized the need for solidarity, cooperation, coordinated action among member states to effectively address the crisis and its consequences. While UN General Assembly played a significant role in raising awareness and mobilizing support for the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic, much of the operational response and coordination were carried out by specialized agencies within the UN system, such as the World Health Organization. Now we can say that UN General Assembly, through its resolutions and initiatives, has made a significant contribution to address the global issues and had a profound impact on shaping the international agenda and influencing global affairs. It provides a platform for diplomatic dialogue, consensus building, and the development of norms and standards that guide the conduct of nations. The UN General Assembly's contributions reflect its role as a central forum for addressing shared challenges and advancing the principles of the United Nations. Besides the positive achievements, in addition to the contributions made by the UN General Assembly, it also faces many challenges, many issues while discharging its assigned functions, its assigned duties and responsibilities. Now let's have a look at the challenges to the United Nations General Assembly. The first challenge which UN General Assembly faces is power imbalance. As you know, the UN General Assembly operates on the principle of sovereign equality. But power imbalance among member states, particularly among the permanent members of the UN Security Council, impacts the decision making and effectiveness of the General Assembly. It means that any one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council can block, can veto any resolution made by the General Assembly, regardless of the level of support from other members. For example, during the Syrian crisis, there were numerous attempts made by member states in the UN General Assembly to pass resolutions condemning the actions of the Syrian government or calling for intervention to stop the violence in Syria. However, these efforts by UN General Assembly were often blocked by the veto power of one or other permanent members, particularly Russia and China, who had vested interests in supporting the Syrian government. Another issue which UN General Assembly faces is lack of enforceability. Resolutions adopted by the UN General Assembly are not legally binding. Though these resolutions carry political weight, but the absence of enforceability limits their relevance. One prominent example which can illustrate the lack of enforceability in the UN General Assembly is the resolution concerning the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. In December 2017, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution condemning the United States' decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and to relocate its embassy there from Tel Aviv. The resolution reaffirmed the long-standing international consensus that the states of Jerusalem should be determined through negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, and called upon countries to refrain from establishing diplomatic missions in Jerusalem. However, despite the overwhelming support for the resolution in the UN General Assembly, the resolution lacked enforceability. The United States, which had exercised its veto power in the United Nations and dismissed the UN General Assembly's resolution as non-binding and announced its intention to proceed with the relocation of its embassy to Jerusalem. So this example demonstrates that UN General Assembly's resolutions are lacking enforceability. These resolutions are not binding upon the member states. Another issue which UN General Assembly faces is financial dependence on member states. Dear students, the UN General Assembly's budget is heavily dependent on contributions from member states. This dependence leads to financial constraints and challenges in addressing global issues effectively by the UN General Assembly. One example which can illustrate this financial dependence is the case of the United States' contributions to the UN budget. The United States has historically been the largest contributor to the UN budget. It is contributing roughly 22% of the UN budget. Due to its substantial financial contribution, the United States often holds significant influence within the UN General Assembly and other UN bodies. Its financial support gives it leverage in decision-making process and allows it to shape the agenda on various issues. For example, the United States may use its financial contributions as leverage to influence resolutions and policy decisions within UN General Assembly, particularly on those issues that align with its national interests. Another major issue which UN General Assembly faces is consensus building. Achieving consensus among diverse member states with different national interests can be challenging. Disagreements often hinder the timely adoption of resolution and impact the UN General Assembly's ability to address pressing global issues. There is also the dominance of the UN Security Council in matters of international peace and security. This dominance of UN Security Council also limits the UN General Assembly's influence, role in certain critical areas, as major decisions are often require Security Council's approval. In today's lecture, we have discussed the role of UN General Assembly, the contributions made by UN General Assembly, as well as the challenges which UN General Assembly face. Now, in our next lecture, we are going to discuss the most important organ of the United Nations, that is Security Council, its structure, functions, and role in maintaining the international peace and security. Thank you.